Hi, I'm Mark from Maxava. I'm going to present some information about our products. Maxava Release Update, September 2019. In this latest enhancement, the MX Configure SQL command has now been enhanced to support the I74 level of using the Start Journal library mechanism to identify journaling of automatic files. In I74, IBM stops supporting the QDefault journal data area methodology, and the latest enhancements has now incorporated the Start Journal library functionality when the MX Configure SQL command is run. For releases I74, 73, 72, 71, and I61, the Start Journal library mechanism will now be utilized. For V5R4 and V5R3 systems, if they are still being utilized, they will still require the QDefault journal functionality, as IBM doesn't support Start Journal library at this level. Also included in the enhancement, the MX Configure SQL now has a value inquire, and this will produce a report showing the current journal enablement options. My configuration shows the libraries currently associated to the configuration. From the Configure SQL command, we can enable, which will turn the journal enablement on, disable, which will remove the enablement, and inquire, which will produce a report. From the report, it will show the configuration, the related journal, and the journal enablement being used, whether it's via the library enablement, the QDefault, or if enablement is not inherited on that library. As an additional enhancement to the latest PTF, the backup local receiver will now be automatically rolled over when the backup configuration is activated if the internal sequence number of the related local journal is above the 9.5 billion sequence number entries. The backup configuration, when activated, will interrogate this value. If it's below the 9.5, it will just activate as standard. If it's above the 9.5 billion threshold journal sequence number, then it will run a change journal option reset and set the value back to 1. Note, this is performed on the backup machine. You should also roll over your local receiver on the source system on a regular basis. The text user interface has been standardized. Some of the F6 create functionalities for a data config, IFS config, MQ config, or a QDLS config. The default parameters are now standardized that will use the Maxava MQ for the message queue name and the Maxava job D for the job description name. An additional enhancement to the text user interface: when removing a library from replication. In the past, this was a two-step method where the assignments were removed and then the library definition was removed. Now, as part of the enhancements, when you remove a library from the display, both the assignments and the library definition were removed at one process. In a large environment configuration that produces a lot of commit control, when the entries are created, they are stored in a file which the configuration manages. During replication, the number of entries in this file will increase. The more commits that have been processed, the larger number of records that are added. During the configuration activation, part of the internal functionality is that configuration tidies up the records for the commit controls that were stored. In the past, this was done sequentially. If you had millions of records, it could take a long period of time to reactivate the configuration. The latest enhancements has changed this functionality. The cleanup is still performed, but it's performed in a much faster and efficient method, and you'll now see an improvement on the start configuration process where you have lots of commit entries being processed. A new enhancement has also been added, again related to commit control. For environments that produce a lot of small commit entries on the production system, the replication task manages those same commit entries on the target replication. Where there is a very high volume of small commits, the receive job can get bottlenecked trying to process the commit details over and over again for multiple small commit entries. A functionality has been added that allows the replication process to choose to bypass these mini commit processing. To do this, a new property has been added called BYPASSCC. This property is placed into the backup environment in the property file, and it allows the commit control bypass to be added to a configuration or to all configurations via the control entry. By setting the bypass commit control property, this will tell the configuration that you associate that the commit entries will be not invoked during the capture replication functionality. This will improve the performance of reading and retrieving the data information and help improve the replication speed. When setting this property, you should always be advised via the Maxava support staff if this is the best option for your environment. Other items that have been addressed. For spool file replication, the functionality that was used to capture the spool file has been changed. This now allows spool files that were generated on a different machine, such as being a migration environment, to be replicated once the machine has been set up after the migration. Some functionalities use a grant object authority referencing a QTemp object. When this process is replayed on the target machine, because the QTemp object does not exist on the target, this would cause an issue. This was originally ignored, and an expected audit would be run at some point, which will then process the authorities to reset the target machine. The new functionality change in this PTF will now capture the create object authority QTemp issue, and it will automatically send a audit entry request to the production machine to fix the issue once the problem has been seen immediately. An IFS has been changed where the path names had a mixed single byte and double byte character. This was causing some replication problems. This issue has now been resolved in this latest PTF. All this information can be found in the relevant PTF cover letters. The features mentioned in this video are available in the following Maxava PTF versions. Thank you for your time.